While not directly funded in this preliminary budget, a significant portion of the $45 million in federal American Rescue Plan Act funds will be invested into programs to provide needed relief to those facing rising housing costs. I want to thank Council for their partnership and direction on that allocation of ARPA funds. We've also increased our down payment assistance and emergency rental assistance through partnerships at the federal and local levels. Our funding allocations represent our administration's and the City Council's commitment to ensuring that we meet the needs of all constituents, regardless of their economic status, to ensure housing opportunities for all. The budget also provides funding to protect our environment, improve our infrastructure, and increase our resilience. We've included funding for initiatives including energy efficiency improvements at our Water Resources Administration building, stormwater system resiliency enhancements, and new hybrid take-home cruisers for police officers to make our fleet more sustainable. Funding is also included for seawall renovation and replacement, as well as enhancements to our sanitary sewer collection system. We're also investing in our young people. The preliminary 2023 budget includes funding commitments to benefit our youth, including continuing funding for My Brothers and Sisters Keeper program, year-round youth employment programs, workforce readiness programs, and our Reads to Me education program. We understand that students cannot learn and thrive if they and their families are not safe. That's why our budget reflects ongoing and new commitments within our neighborhood health and safety pillar. And new commitments, including nearly $1.3 million for the continuation of our Community Assistance and Life Liaison Program, better known as CALL, which utilizes public safety funding for social services professionals to respond to non-criminal, nonviolent calls. The program not only helps individuals in crisis avoid police interaction and possible arrest, but connects them to needed services to help them recover from the crisis. We're also continuing funding in the amount of more than $1.4 million for the body-worn camera program, ensuring transparency within our law enforcement operations. In addition, we are continuing funding for the Healthy St. Pete Initiative, Neighborhood Partnership Matching Grants, the Mayor's Mini Grant Program, and Keep Pinellas Beautiful. You'll also find needed commitments to our arts community and for the lifeblood of our local economy, our businesses, with an emphasis on equality. That includes funding for a new diversity, equity, and inclusion officer and support staff, as well as funding for new staff as part of our implementation of the city's recently completed disparity study. You'll also find crucial funding for our Grow Smarter Economic and Workforce Development Program, small business grants programs, commercial revitalization and storefront conservation programs, the greenhouse, the Business Corridor Support Program, and so much more. Additionally, funding is proposed to support and ensure growth within our arts community, including allocations for the city's Arts Grants Program, the Woodson African American Museum of Florida, and the Florida Orchestra, to name a few. As we share the details of our proposed budget, I hope you will take time to consider your own priorities. Now is the time to share your thoughts, and we are listening. The budget is a work in progress, and we are balancing unlimited needs with finite resources. But through dialogue, collaboration, and consensus, we will build a budget that reflects the needs of our entire community and applies our resources in an efficient, effective, and equitable manner. Thank you all for your partnership. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Welch really laid out the overview of our budget, which we've been working on since January. And with that, we began with a committee meeting of City Council to bring forward our budget priorities. And that comes from each of us listening to the residents in our district, attending neighborhood meetings and other community meetings. You learn a lot about where the values are, what we need to focus on when it comes to spending your money. And tonight is where you can really put an exclamation point on that and really help to guide this. This isn't something that is just for show. It's not just a formality. This is truly how we hold ourselves accountable to you all as we work on this budget. One thing that that kind of sums this up, what Mayor Welch was talking about, is that all of this comes down to creating stronger neighborhoods. Because when you have stronger neighborhoods, you've got safer streets. That's why we put money into public safety. We have housing that works for everyone, whether you're buying or renting. We are putting the funding into the actual construction, the incentives and the programs to help make sure that everyone can have a safe and affordable place to call home in our city. Stronger neighborhoods mean working on our infrastructure and continuing the commitments that we have to increase the work that we're doing on our sewer systems, on water resources, and also on our streets and sidewalks. These are things that affect people every single day. Strong neighborhoods mean healthy neighborhoods. That's why it's so important to continue investing in our parks and recreation, our programs, our youth development programs, our social services. All of those things come together to help promote the health of our residents to make stronger neighborhoods. And of course, we wouldn't even be on the map if it wasn't for the arts. And so you'll find in the budget that we're working on right now, we have made a strong commitment to helping the arts and our artists to continue to thrive as our city becomes more and more popular as an arts destination. And finally, with an eye toward the future, this budget isn't just for today. This budget keeps us on the right track for many years to come. And that's why it's important to take a good look at resilience and sustainability efforts that we're making, and always ask ourselves, how can we do more? How can we do better? Tonight, you'll help us answer those questions. We have some folks who have joined us by Zoom, and of course, we have a wonderful group here tonight, here in person. I look forward to hearing from you. I'm sure that my colleagues do as well, but let's not let this be the only time that we have this conversation. We vote in September on the budget. So between now and then, let this be the start of many conversations that we have as we create a budget that truly reflects our values. Liz?
Building a budget is about priorities, and the city's annual budget development process is a balance between our numerous priorities and limited resources. As the mayor mentioned earlier in his comments, the budget process is centered on ensuring our resources are deployed along one of the mayor's 5 pillars for progress, which are in turn guided by the 6 principles for accountable and responsive government. Our goal on an annual basis is to ensure that the citywide investments we make support our vision of being a diverse, vibrant city, guided by principled progress and intentional inclusivity, where innovative partnerships and ingenuity create opportunity for all. The city's budget development process is also dictated by state statute and city ordinance, and we have developed a series of internal processes that allow us to meet all the deadlines prescribed by law. Starting back in December, the budget department began the planning phase for the FY23 budget. At this point in the process, we're working in 3 different fiscal years, having just completed FY21, recently adopting the budget for FY22, and planning for FY23. In January, we had the City Council Priorities Committee of the Whole, which is a chance for City Council members to share their priorities with the public and city administration. Also held in January and February, the kickoff meetings start the formal budget process. At this meeting, the budget department provides information, training, and important budget dates to the departments. Next, departments complete internal reviews of their budgets, and any changes to the budgets are organized into proposals. And once the department has prioritized these proposals, their official request is communicated to the Budget and Management Department as the department's budget submission for the year. After budget reviews, the department submissions, line item review meetings are held. Each department meets with budget and city administration to review and discuss their proposed budgets. During this process, proposals are further prioritized in an effort to ensure that each is aligned with the city's value and strategic pathways. After the line item review process is completed, we have committee of the whole meetings with city council to report on the progress we have made and to solicit input and direction from city council. And then around this time every year, we hold a budget open house where the public has an opportunity to participate in the budget process by sharing their thoughts and priorities with the city. Tonight, the floor is yours, and the mayor and city council would like to hear from you. Besides tonight, you will continue to have opportunities to provide input on the budget, including 2 public hearings in September where public comment is encouraged. Other important dates in the budget process include in late June, but no later than July 1st, we will receive the certified values from the property appraiser's office. And on or before July 15th, Mayor Welch will submit his balanced budget recommendations to City Council. At the July 21st City Council meeting, we will ask City Council to set a tentative millage rate and the dates of the 2 public hearings. And then the first public budget hearing is currently scheduled for September 15th, followed by the second public hearing on September 29th. At this meeting, City Council adopts the FY23 budget, which will run from October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023. Some key investments in the preliminary FY23 budget presented at the recent workshops include funding for affordable workforce housing. There is $675,000 in the CIP budget for affordable workforce housing projects, which is a $75,000 increase over FY22. $7.425 million is budgeted for the Housing and Community Development Department, which includes funding in the general fund, as well as several other funds that contain state and federal grant resources to fund the city's housing programs. And there's $8.5 million over the 5-year CIP plan for affordable housing land acquisition. Also included in the preliminary budget is funding to begin the implementation of this disparity study recommendations. And there's funding for a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer and support staff. The preliminary budget also maintains or increases our investments in key strategic initiatives such as at-risk youth, year-round youth employment programs, both after school and summer, social action funding, our arts grant program, independent corridor storefront conservation neighborhood commercial fund, our economic development corporation, Main Streets, Grow Smarter, and other economic development programs. We are including a transfer to our economic stability fund. There's funding for water and stormwater infrastructure and for business process improvements. For public safety, there are assignments over the 5-year CIP plan to fund the public safety training facility for K-9 and fire rescue. In the police department, there's continued funding for both the body-worn camera and the community assistance and life liaison program. For fire rescue department, we are including the replacement of 2 fire engines and 2 rescue vehicles, and funding for the construction of the new fire station 2 is included in the CIP budget. We also have over $4.69 million in new investments towards sustainability and resiliency, including hybrid police take-home vehicles, stormwater system resiliency enhancements, and water resources facility energy efficiency improvements. I'd also like to mention that information about the city's budget is available on the city's website on the budget department page. And thank you again for joining us this evening. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And there's also the option again downstairs of providing feedback at the participation tables downstairs.
Thank you, Liz. Next, we will begin our public comment segment. And we just have a few reminders for everyone before we get started with that. First of all, if you wish to speak, Patty, the clerk has the yellow cards here. So if you have not filled one out yet and you do wish to speak, please grab one of those to complete so that you can have your name called when it's time. Tonight, the mayor and city council are listening. Everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. I know that you are here with specific requests on your mind, specific points that you want to make. The 3 minutes goes by very fast. So make sure that you consider putting your priorities at the top of your moment, if you will, so that you can make sure that you don't miss that part if you wait until the end. If you have questions for us, we're not doing a dialogue tonight, but we do want to speak with you. If you have questions that we can answer, please, you can email us, council@stpete.org, mayor@stpete.org. You can call us here and we can have those conversations that we're all looking forward to. So if you have specific questions, please make sure that you follow up with us at a time when we can actually have a conversation. Mr. Clerk, did you have any additional guidelines for everyone this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair. If you're in Zoom and you're wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 on your phone and we'll acknowledge you then. And please state your name and address for the record when you address council and mayor. Madam Chair, I'm going to call 2 at a time in the chamber, then I'll go to Zoom, go back and forth.
Terrific, thank you.
First 2 speakers, Jaleesa Blackshear and Greg Davidson. You can use either podium. Please state your name and address for the record. Excuse me, and you'll have 3 minutes to address City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Jaleesa Blackshear, 2510 10th Street South. Good evening, Madam Chair, Council, Mayor Welch. I have been reviewing the last several fiscal years of the annual comprehensive finance reports. And through the statement of net positions and the statement of activities, it seems like the city budget is on its track for good standing. In reference to the capital improvement budget, I'm going to be advocating for housing. Does the administration have the capacity to develop public housing on city-owned land? It seems HB 1339 will allow for that. The city council and the administration is priding itself on administering affordable housing, but the affordable housing is not accessible per AMI. I also would recommend an additional $250,000 be transferred to the community law program. Actually, that would require an amendment. Funding a deposit program. Mr. Gerdes said that the city could potentially lose money if cases were not meritorious on face value. Well, the whole purpose of the program would be for legal representation to intervene, and that would ultimately be to the discretion of the 6th Judicial Circuit Court. As far as the American Rescue Plans, I know those plans are separate from this budget, but I am advocating for a guaranteed income pilot, not necessarily for aged out foster kids, but for single family households that make up neighborhoods such as Cromwell Heights, Bartlett Park, and 13th Street Heights. I think if done correctly, that program can be administered properly. I know Council Member Montanari does not approve of that. I can understand, but Council or Madam Chair Driscoll, it is a necessity in your district in some pockets. I understand that City Council has the legislative power to legally veto 3 special project managers, that the mayor has the authority to appoint. I'm just requesting, if appointed, Mayor Welch, can those special project managers be put on public housing, community law program, and a guaranteed income to specify. Thank you. I yield, Madam the Chair.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Greg Davidson, 4705 First Street Northeast. Good to see most of you again. And Mayor, thank you for putting together the proposals you've done. I appreciate the order and the priority of the 5 pillars. I was a senior economic development specialist for the city of Minneapolis. I have some experience in affordable housing. There is so much more we can do here. I'd like to say it, first of all, the city, you have to protest more. You have to get more buy-in from the Republicans in Tallahassee to return home rule, because there is so much more we can do. And until we change people in Tallahassee, I don't know how that's going to happen. So I encourage you to do much more lobbying for that. I mean, the state budget, we've got about $400 million for the entire state just between two small programs, the SHIP and the SAIL. I mean, come on, $400 million for the entire state of Florida, while it still has a unallocated $3 billion surplus. Poor priorities there. So I want to suggest, where might we find some money here in the city? We have a $711 million city budget. I think if we could take even 1/2 more from each of the city departments and reallocate that to affordable housing, then that would be an extra $3.5 million each year. So I have a hard time understanding that, say, the community services department, they cannot find another $39,000 in their budget to help reallocate towards housing. We've got to really clamp down or look at the screws and make it possible, because I just don't think where we're going right now is adequate funds. Other suggestions. I know that there are foundations in Minneapolis, Detroit, Denver, and the foundations are using what's called long-term mission grants that can help with the development and lowering costs for rehabbing and developing housing. I've met with the president of the Tampa Bay Community Foundation. She thought it was an interesting idea. In my other research, I'm only aware of one foundation in the entire state of Florida that's really doing anything directly with affordable housing. So I'm encouraging you to use your elbow and your networking to loosen up some more funds from them, because I think that's another resource. And I guess last, I'd like to say that I hear about the grant programs, and I think in concept, yes, it's needed, but I'd like to suggest that rather than doing grants, and again, Minneapolis had a wonderful program when I left the city 8 years ago. It had a $22 million, 2% revolving loan fund. So rather than doing a grant, why don't you make it like even a 1 or a 2% loan? So in 5 or 7 years, you'll get most of that money back and you can recycle it.
Next speaker, Madam Chair, is going to be coming from Zoom. Next speaker's name is Maria Scruggs. Ms. Scruggs, once you enter into the meeting space, please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address council and the mayor. Ms. Scruggs?
Hello.
We can hear you. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address council and mayor.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor Welch and Councilwoman Gina Driscoll. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity. Sure that children have a solid academic foundation. One way to ensure that our children have a solid academic foundation is to ensure that they can read. The Phyllis Wheatley Rise to Read campaign represents a group of people who are invested in St. Petersburg and working and making sure that we're pulling together our resources, and we're asking the city to join us in this fiscal year 22-23 budget to make the Phyllis Wheatley Rise to Read campaign's ask of $700,000 a priority for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have anyone else on Zoom?
No, ma'am.
All right, let's
Next two
return to
speakers.
in-house.
Matthias Walker and Dawson Cannon, please use either podium and state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address city council. And that lowers down, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. All right, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address council and mayor.
Matthew Walker, 1810 Maryland Avenue Northeast, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33703. Also Director of Operations for Miracle by the Bay and Director of Operations for a brand new special needs baseball league, Miracle by the Bay Baseball. The reason a few members of our team are here behind me is because we wanted to address a few topics with you. One regarding ADA accessible bathrooms and the need for 24-hour access with a barcode that is on the back of their ADA handicap tag submitted to them from the Department of Motor Vehicles. We believe that doing this will give not only special needs community members the ability to always have access to go to the bathroom, but we have some parents on our special needs baseball league that have approached us about putting this in, and I told them that I'd bring this to your attention. Also, the ADA parking at the Azalea Little League baseball complex. There are two baseball fields. The one that I previously built years ago called Miracle League, and also the one that is adjacent behind the Miracle League field. Both of those are one of them is shared by a paved driveway. That needs to be changed, and that needs to be put into the budget to allocate funding for that, because the paved driveway needs to change and come out. Also, some of the parents that have come to me as a disability advocate have also suggested we come to city council and get that addressed. Now, I do have the ADA and diversity coordinator for the city of St. Pete. He did bring us some additional questions for you guys. Now, he brought to my attention that we need to address more funding for events and programs. So,
Thank you.
it's my time.
Dawson, please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes. to
I'm
address-
Dawson Cannon, 751 17th Avenue South. I've never done anything like this before, so I thank you guys for the opportunity to do so now. Really just here to kind of report on what I've witnessed as a resident, especially in my neighborhood. I don't know if it falls in the category of housing for more, public safety, or even propagation of new businesses that are trying to form. But I live on 17th Avenue South, right halfway between 4th Street South and 9th Street South. And I spend a lot of time as a pedestrian in that area. There's a couple of restaurants that are coming up, like Nueva Cantina and Nico's Pizza just opened right there on 4th Street. But what I can't figure out is why there seems to be such a high volume of high velocity traffic with zero. There's one, button crosswalk connecting, I guess, Salt Creek to the actual Bartlett Park where the tennis courts are. But other than that, there's really no safety measures to speak of. And I mean, I've crossed that street myself. It feels like I'm playing a game of Frogger on the arcade machines because these cars have nothing really holding them back. And I'm less concerned about myself and more concerned about a lot of the other locals in that neighborhood spending a lot of time on the street corners, and many of whom are not with much of their faculties. And I fear for the day that one of them steps into the street in the wrong time, and gets hit by a car. And, that'll be there for many people to witness. And it's something that I had to record a video from when I was about a mile away. I saw like a nice woman who, she's got a walker. I'm not a doctor, but a condition in her legs, possibly like elephantitis or something. And she's crossing this street, dodging these cars like no one in her condition ought to be daring to. And it's just so close to the downtown center. It's like people just head south on 4th Street, and like once they pass that light on 9th Avenue South, they're off to the races. And it really doesn't have to be that way, because if you can just slow down the cars on those corridors that are central to, the downtown region, like this applies to 9th Street as well. Slow down those cars. Those businesses are going to be seeing, more business, and, there's going to be less risk of simple things like just simply crossing the street. I don't have kids, but if I did, it would be a top concern of mine is like, okay, my kid wants to walk down to the water. Thanks.
Next two speakers, Madam Chair, William Kilgore and Carla Correa. You can go to either podium. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address mayor and council. William, you can raise that up for that button.
Just about my height here anyway, so. Yeah, hey everybody, my name's William Kilgore. I'm with the St. Petersburg Tenants Union. I reside in the Ponce de Leon neighborhood here in St. Pete. I'm just here to talk about the budget. I've done some looking over the proposed budget and some of the past year's budget. You can see my shirt says "Smash the Police State," and that's actually what I'm here to talk about. Is the St. Petersburg Police Department in the funding it's going to them. This department is, where do I begin? There's a whole bunch of stuff. Pretty much with the department, we've got the clearance rate, right? So the rate at which the department is actually solving crimes is extremely low. Extremely low. They're totally inefficient. Actually, back in the year 2000, 20 years ago, there were about 3,900 crimes solved a year. Here in the year 2021, there was 1,580. So we've seen the numbers of crimes being solved go down. What are they doing? Why are we giving them $6 million more when they're not actually doing anything? We've heard a lot of people talking about transit. We've heard people talking about ADA compliant stuff at our parks, and that's all so important. And we need to stop looking to these failed solutions to crime, because really, when we look at it, St. Pete PD has higher crime rates than the state of Florida average, the national averages. It's one of the highest crime rates of all the local municipalities here in St. Pete. I think they come in number 3 in terms of the rate of crime, and we're paying the most. We're paying the highest percentage of our general fund budget is going to the cops. It's 40%. The only other higher municipality is Kenneth City. They pay around half, which is wild. It's mind-boggling. But the fact that we're paying for this department when they don't reduce crime. It's proven, we're seeing it, but things that actually work to help people, material benefits such as right to counsel, which would help people. It's proven in the places where it's done to help reduce evictions, keep people in their homes. And when people can stay in their homes, there's less prone to crime happening because we have an economic system that's based on competition, and people have to do what they have to do to survive. And so if we can fund the people, not the police, to crack down on people. I think, we're looking at the cops. They don't reduce crime. They're not doing anything. When I'm saying all this about crime rates, I'm not saying, oh, well, we just need to get a new police chief or anything like that. No, we need to defund. We need to take money away from them and put them into the things that we need that actually work for people. It may not be popular. Maybe, the national polls say people don't care about defund. I care, and it's important because it makes sense. You want to make data-driven decisions. Look at the data on the clearance rates with St. Pete PD and compare it to the rest of the county, and look at what's happening. It's really bad. Anyway, fund affordable housing, or fund social housing, public housing. Thank you.
Folks, if you could hold your applause, please. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Carla Correa, 345 Fifth Avenue North. I'm also here with the Tenants Union. And I agree everything that Will said about defunding the police. But in terms of something that we should fund, I want to advocate for public housing as opposed to affordable housing, because our Florida rental assistance just went out. The emergency rental assistance for the county is being used up rapidly. We don't have rent control. We don't have a right to counsel program yet. We don't have the state eviction moratorium anymore. So St. Petersburg residents are continuing to get kicked out of their homes and be displaced at unconscionable levels. And the rents are continuing to skyrocket. And the bottom line is we have no solid public option for housing right now. Just the very limited affordable housing that reaches its limits before it's even open. The expansion of Kreisman's 10-year plan is really just an expansion of bailouts for developers to build more unaffordable housing when we already have a surplus of housing. In terms of increasing the market rate housing, why would we subsidize the increasing market rate housing when no one can afford the market rate right now? The market rate is like $1,800 for a 1-bedroom. Who here can afford that? Like, no one here can afford that. Who is this housing being built for? And in terms of the so-called affordable housing that's being built, it's completely insufficient. For example, the Skyway lofts in the Skyway Marina District was already 100% full before it was even open, and it already had 1,800 inquiries within like the first day that it was open. So this speaks to the need for a truly for a public option, because what affordable housing is, it's really just public subsidies for a developer to permanently profit off of it. So it's a bad deal for us taxpayers, for the taxpayers of St. Pete. We need for the thousands of vacant units in our city to be expropriated and taken off the speculative real estate market to keep them permanently affordable. Housing is a human right, and we must turn away from the pro-business market solutions to housing that are being offered by the Welch administration and towards ones that empower working class people. We also need more money for transportation, like public transportation. The gas prices are going up. And then one thing that's sneaky, like we don't need $500,000 for the hybrid police cars. That's not going to help the environment. The police don't need more money. And if you agree with what like Will and I are saying about public housing and defunding the police, join us for a protest on May 25th at 6 p.m. here in front of the City Hall, and visit our website, stpetersburgtenantsunion.org, for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, we're following the same rules as we do in these chambers for our city council meeting, which means no applause. I know that some of you have found some creative ways to show your support without disrupting the meeting. So if we could all follow that tonight. If you got to make some noise, go ahead and step outside. Thanks. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone who's joined us on Zoom?
No, ma'am.
All right. Could you
Next
call
is
the next two speakers, please?
James Trimarco and Bruce Nissen. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address City Council. Go to either podium. And Mayor.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking this feedback on the budget. My name is James Trimarco. I live at 809 18th Avenue North. And I'm here to talk about housing. I'm going to add my voice to the chorus of voices calling for an additional emphasis on housing. And I want to mention a couple of figures to try to convey the urgency of the situation that the city's facing right now. So Washington Post 2 weeks ago ran this list of the places where the rent increases have been the highest in the entire country. Tampa Bay is number 3, the 3rd highest in the whole United States. There is no giant 39% increase in wages here. And so, you know, that puts the residents, especially the long-term residents of the city, in a very difficult place where they are facing displacement. And speaking of displacement, I just personally ran the numbers from the 2010 to 2020 decennial census and saw that the city lost more than 4,000 Black residents at a time when the overall population increased quite a lot. That's displacement. It's, you know, as somebody who's raised here, I actually find that like disturbing and upsetting that you know, the population of the city will so quickly change in that direction. If you take all of the rental households in the 2020 census and then look at the affordable housing that the city provides right now, it's just enough for about 9% of those people. And so we're really only providing subsidized housing to 1 out of 10 people who needs housing. And so like, just with that in mind, I'm gonna give a pitch for Right to Counsel. I want to draw your attention to, because Cleveland put their Right to Counsel program in 2019. So they've had a couple years to look at its results. They hired an independent analyst firm to go and like run the numbers on it. And here's some of the things they found: that the program increased the percentage of tenants who are facing eviction and come to that trial with a lawyer from 1% to 18%. That's really big difference. Of those tenants who are facing eviction who had legal representation due to this program, 93% of them kept their housing. It's a pretty big impact. And their report says that the city of Cleveland saved $1.1 million after investing $2.7 into this program because they saved so much money on providing services to people who have been evicted. And, you know, if you guys want to see their like long report, I'm happy to like forward it. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for listening to my comments here. My name's Bruce Ness and live at 253 Sunlit Cove Drive Northeast, St. Pete, 33702. I too am going to add here to the housing thing. I mean, if there's a massive crisis right now in St. Pete, it's housing. And I thank you for every change in the budget has moved more and more and more in the direction of affordable housing, and I thank you for that. But I just feel like it's nowhere near enough. Nowhere near enough. You've got to make massive changes in the direction of our budget, in the direction of social housing. We need to do some short-term things like the Right to Counsel and other types of things, which I know you're moving on and we're likely to win in the next few months. And I thank you for all those things also. I also wanted to mention kind of the longer-term thing that is necessary here. And I think we need permanent affordability. I've never seen in my lifetime such a massive situation of what economists call basically market failure. And market failure is when the private markets fail to deliver some urgent need or some need for the people. And we're in a massive market failure right now in the area of housing. There's just no other way to look at it. And so therefore we're going to have to, in addition to all the things we're trying to do through market mechanisms, and again, I'm thankful that we're moving things in that direction, we have to create what I would basically call social housing, which is publicly controlled housing that permanently keeps housing affordable for all classes of people. So that means we've got to move more stuff. Instead of just saying affordable housing for people making 20% over median income, we've got to be thinking of those people making median income, making 80% of median income, 60% of median income, 50% of median income. Those people too have to have a place to live, along with people making more than the median income. And social housing, to make this clear, what I think we need is not what was known as the old style public housing, which has concentrated a lot of poor people in a building, a lot of really, really poor people, put very little money into that, watch it deteriorate, watch it go to hell, and then say public housing fails. That is not what we need. And that's not what I think anybody's calling for here when we ask for social housing in the future. Social housing has to be mixed income, moving all the income levels into housing that is publicly controlled. You can do it through land trusts. You can do it through a number of other mechanisms. It doesn't really matter that much as long as the public's in control of the housing, because when the public is in control of the housing, it makes it affordable to the people. Private market will not do that. So I'm asking that you please move in the direction of social housing in addition to the kind of the private market mechanisms of things and subsidies to developers and other things that you're currently contemplating. I do not see that social housing thing in the city's plans at this point. I'm asking you to please consider that and to move in that direction in addition to the things that you're already thinking of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next two speakers, Madam Chair, Dr. Christy Faust and Natalie Stockard. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address Mayor and City Council. You can go to either podium.
I'm Dr. Christy Faust. I live in the Harbordale neighborhood in zip code 33705. I'm a homeowner and a business owner. And there's a lot that I could address. I decided to go with bullet points. Just a couple of bullet points. So less than 1% of the St. Pete City budget goes towards housing as of right now. And during this housing emergency, we need the housing expenditures to include social housing outside of the private market for people with incomes from 0 to 120% of the annual median income. So with that, I support creating a multifamily social housing project in this 2023 budget. I also support protecting current renters by creating a fully funded universal right to counsel program. Fully funded, universal, meaning it gets all the money it needs, everybody can use it. Yeah, those are my things. So thank you for your time and for addressing the housing emergency that is going on with this budget, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Natalie Stockard. I am currently at 610 Earl Avenue North. That's 33701. And I'm here speaking strictly for myself on two topics. And the first is the call program. I wanted to say that I am very happy to see this in St. Pete. I'm happy to see that it is being expanded. And I look forward to seeing it continue to expand and at the same time take some work off of our police officers that they are simply not trained to do. And my second point is that I'm hearing a lot of requests for more money. And I wanted to remind the City Council that you have sitting in front of you for the past 2 years now, a chance to offload a very large financial risk and bring in $250,000 a year at least. And that is to lease out the management and only the management of the city marina to Safe Harbor Development. I know there's been a lot of questions about it, so I'm just going to say from a strictly financial point of view, the city has a lot of needs. And as much as I love being on the water, owning a boat is a luxury. And there are a lot of people here who need basics. So I encourage the City Council to think from that financial standpoint. Thank you.
Next two speakers, Madam Chair, Bryce Springfield and Carrie Mueller. You will have 3 minutes to address the mayor and city council. You can go to either podium and please state your name and address for the record.
Hey there, my name's Bryce Springfield, 3316 31st Avenue North, apartment 203. I want to talk about affordable housing. As mentioned earlier, less than 1% of the city budget is going toward housing. That doesn't reflect what the city really needs right now in the ongoing housing crisis. So I'm calling on City Council to direct more funding to community-controlled, mixed-income public housing that isn't just affordable for like people at 120% of the median income, but for everybody. And that needs to be built on public lands, publicly owned, democratically managed. And along with that, now is the time for us to promote tenants' rights, like right to legal counsel. Yeah, I mean, hopefully everybody on city council knows about the report by CoStar Group mentioned in the Tampa Bay Times a few months ago, which found that the Tampa Bay area had the fastest growing rent of any metropolitan area in the country. I think that demonstrates pretty well that we need to take this seriously and address it in ways that have proven to work internationally. This needs to be the single top priority for the city moving forward, because I mean, not only can it save costs in the long run, but this affects real people in St. Pete and can improve plenty of people's lives. Personally, when I was in high school, I experienced this sort of issue myself, moving between homeless shelters. So I know personally and from other friends of mine that that kind of instability creates difficulties with education for kids who don't have stable housing or don't have a stable place to study. And for younger students particularly, it creates issues with like childcare when their parents are working, and that can create a negative economic impact with those kinds of barriers to employment, to parents being employed. And as William of the Tenants Union mentioned earlier, we need to start thinking about preventative measures for public safety. You know, I'm happy as well that the call program is going so well and that it's being expanded. But along with that, we need to be funding quality public housing, because that can get people, you know, in a stable situation, gets people off of the streets, and they can, you know, really they have more ground for themselves to be employed and you know, have a safe place to stay. Yeah, just really want to emphasize that mixed income, public housing, publicly managed, because private market isn't working in that respect. We need change there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Mueller, and I live at 1125 James Avenue South. I live in Campbell Park, and thank you very much for the opportunity to provide input on the budget. And I just wanted to speak out in regards to the youth education and employment opportunities. We have that highlighted in our neighborhood plan, which our neighborhood is undertaking. And that's something that I want to continue to promote and support through our neighborhood. And I think it's something that we can collaborate with other neighborhoods in that area, including 13th Street Heights and Wildwood. So I just wanted to emphasize the importance of funding those programs, especially coming up on summer break. I think that there's a lot of people in our neighborhood that could really benefit from them. And I've spoken to some of our neighbors, and they have some concerns over availability of spaces. In the past, they've had a difficult time accessing those programs due to the number of open spaces, and also difficulty in the application process. They indicate that there are income restrictions that are too low for them to qualify. So potentially we could increase those income limits so that more people could qualify if we had more funding. So I just want to speak out in support of those ongoing programs like Cohort of Champions and how much they benefit our community. And I also wanted to just speak in regards to some feedback that I get from my neighbors as I work in the neighborhood. They would like to address paving the alleys. And we know that that is a assessment potentially for the residents that needs to be divided between homeowners. But I'd like to pursue some additional funding sources and see if there might be some grant availability, maybe through different programs, maybe CDBG or Tiger grants, or maybe there's something out there, because it would really improve safety. It would improve the issues that we have sometimes with alley dumping, and it would improve accessibility for pedestrians in the neighborhood and the kids. And it's a big priority for a lot of the long-term residents. And they feel that the alleys were paved at one point and they weren't maintained. And at this point, they're rutted. We have some issues with our trash trucks accessing the alleys. So I want to speak in support of finding some funding sources for paving those alleys. And just the continued, support of the city. We really appreciate you making it a priority. Thank you.
Next two speakers, Madam Chair. Matt Bird and Nick Carey, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the mayor and city council. You can go to either podium.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Matt Bird, 1510 22nd Avenue South. Mayor Welch, council chair, and city council. Good to see you guys. It's a good looking council. Appreciate it. All right. Just want to weigh in really quickly on the housing. I worked on the front lines of a program funded by the city of St. Petersburg. And the moment someone came in looking for housing, I cringed because it broke my heart. I had to send them away with no answers. So thank you all for your work you're doing. Here for a different reason. I'm an organizer with Faith in Florida, multi-faith, multiracial organization fighting for protecting democracy, building community, and what's close and personal to me is reducing gun violence. More importantly, though, I'm here because I'm a concerned citizen. I went away, but I can't stay away because I have something to offer to the problem. In 2021, my young daughter was 7 years old. We were standing on our back porch, not far from your mother's house, Mayor Wells. At all. I can see it from my back porch where I was standing, and shots rang out, and we heard a scream, and my daughter heard that scream, and she went in the house, and she said, "Daddy, I can't get that scream out of my head." That person's probably dead by now. 7 years old. She shouldn't have to process that. Fast forward a year to last week. Okay, same back porch. All my kids, all my children, myself, standing outside. Broad daylight. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Clearly, two sides in an open shootout on broad daylight on 22nd Avenue South. Folks, we have a real problem with gun violence. And we don't have time for programs that feel good for the moment and provide relief for the moment. We need a sustainable effort. The answers are out there. I've been trained. Since going away, I've traveled to Washington, D.C., New York, and I've been trained by the folks that lobbied Congress for CVI. And CVI is Community Violence Intervention. I have the data, I have the facts, I have the information. There are solutions. Guess what CVI is? Keys for Life, started by a father who lost a son to gun violence. He knows the answers. And he's made more impact in a year than many of these programs have made in decades. I hate to say it. So we need to have an intentional effort on funding programs. Mr. Marquis should not have to worry about if he's going to be able to do this work next year because of inadequate funding. So I just want to encourage you guys. I'll be reaching out. I'll be sending information. I am connected to the experts. They're here for you guys, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Carey, 5320 10th Street North. I'm also an organizer from Faith in Florida. We're coming at you from all sides here tonight. So I want to echo what my colleague Matt said, and I also want to say that these things are not completely divorced from each other. Access to stable and secure housing is one of the ways which we make our communities more secure. And along those lines, I want to thank this council and I want to thank Mr. Mayor for having an increased emphasis on housing. We've seen that in the allocations to the American Rescue Plan. We see it in an increased budget for this upcoming calendar year. But we really need to look at this in orders of magnitude of size and scope of what we're looking at here. We are trying to dig ourselves out of a hole that is decades in the making. The current system we have right now essentially makes it so that 50% of the population just has no shot at paying less than 30% of their rent. And then 50% is for the other folks. There's actually a surplus of housing, which has caused the area median income to go up by about $10,000 in the past year. And that's not people who live here. We're not making $10,000 a year more. Those are people moving in and unfortunately displacing the people who have been here for a number of years. So I want to add to the calls for a social housing pilot project. This is the type of change in the model where we're not just subsidizing developers and seeing that money leave our community. That money is staying right here and investing in the housing and in the communities that are already here. It remains under public control. It remains democratically controlled and is stable and, most importantly, permanently affordable. In the short term, I want to see us invest in short-term strategies while we build up that housing stock, fully funding a universal right to counsel program. There shouldn't be any stipulations if you're facing an eviction. You should just have right to legal representation. We want to make sure that all of us are covered. I know we heard some stats earlier about how effective that can be in keeping people in their homes. What we're really trying to do is protect our communities. There's a lot of research that shows that when people are displaced from their community, not only do they suffer, but the community suffers. They lose their support systems. They are removed from families, friends, churches, other institutions, and the community also loses their expertise and care. So please continue to increase affordable housing, a pilot project for social housing, and fully fund universal guaranteed right to counsel. Thank you.
The next two speakers, Madam Chair, Teresa Frost and Alec Wilkowski. Please state your name and address for the record. And you have 3 minutes to address the mayor and council.
Hi, my name is Teresa, and I live in the 33713 area. Not sure what you do with the addresses, so I didn't want to put it all out there. I'm 26 years old, and from the age of 18 to now, I have moved every year. Every single year, I've had to pack up my car and move, and moving is traumatic. Those 8 years does not even include the 7 times that I had to move when I was a child because we could not have affordable housing. So I'm here to talk to you about affordable housing. As everyone else has stated, the Tampa Bay area has increased dramatically. And I have a place right now that my lease ends June 30th. So every day me and my roommates are worried about when my landlord is going to tell us how much more we have to pay next year. So I have no idea if I'm going to have to move for the 9th year in a row. So I'm asking you that in your proposed budget, you only have 1% of the $700 million to affordable housing. We deserve more than that. I'm asking you to invest in affordable housing, but also to stop investing in privatized housing, invest in community housing. And if you're not sure where to begin on that, my brothers actually live in Austin and they are doing a pilot program of community housing. And it is a really amazing program. And I'm sure that St. Pete could be doing something similar here. Housing is a human right, and community housing can happen and it can be affordable. Also, since being at this meeting, there are 2 other things that were brought up that I wanted to reiterate with my time. I wanted to talk about what someone had brought up earlier, which was ADA compliance. That should be a no-brainer that there's some money in the budget for ADA compliance. So I just wanted to reiterate that from that person in our parks, in our bathrooms, and in our parking. And also what Matt Bird just said, didn't know that existed, but you should definitely invest in a CIV program. So if you have community members coming up here telling you where the city is failing, please listen to them, and please find the money to invest in us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alec Wilkowski. I live at 3752 38th Avenue North. I'm an organizer with Pinellas TSA. Thank you, Madam Chair, Council, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to use my time today to advocate, and I call upon the mayor and city council to enact a fully funded universal tenant right to counsel ordinance. I want to spend my time digging a little bit deeper than the other folks have so far. So what is fully funded? That means that this program wouldn't just be for folks facing eviction. It would be for folks who maybe get into a landlord dispute, so we could nip the issue in the bud. And it could empower tenants to really exercise their rights. and solve landlord disputes before they get caught up in the courts and all the costs associated with that. We also need a fund for tenants who plan to withhold rent. A lot of the times when there's an issue for a tenant, they start withholding their rent until something gets fixed, and that's what starts the eviction proceedings. And sometimes by the time that they just need the time to have their case heard, they don't have the funds to put up that to put their rent money in with the clerk of the court in an escrow of sorts. And so I think there should a fully funded means, including funding for those folks to ensure that they can have their due process respected and have legal representation. The other part that I said was a universal tenant right to counsel, and that means anyone regardless of income. I've heard some rumblings in the mayor's administration about means testing this program, and that's of great concern to me. Means testing refers to, having some sort of income limit on this, and that really creates a lot of additional administration costs because you have to have someone going through and making sure that they fit the specific criteria. If it's universal, that job isn't necessary. And also, anytime you put paperwork in front of someone, especially someone that's struggling to prove their income, they might not have, neatly filed, W-2s and all that, back at home like I do. And so that could be the difference between them participating in the program and walking away. And then finally, when we means test programs, it creates resentment among our populace because let's say, you make $40,001 and the limit is $40,000. How are you going to feel about people that are making less than that amount? Or what if you make you make $50,000? You're still within the median income of the area, but you could definitely benefit from this program. And so we want a cohesive public, and for that reason, we should really encourage universal programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone who has joined us by Zoom?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
And for anyone who has joined us since we got started and you need a yellow card in order to speak, Patty is in the back there with cards if anyone needs one. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, the next two speakers, Peyton, I believe it's Hoy, and Olivia Cole. Please state your name and address for the record. And you will have 3 minutes to address the mayor and city council.
Hello, my name is Peyton Hoey, and I live at 5234 Tennis Court Circle. I'm here today to demand that St. Pete funds the people and not the police. The St. Pete Police Department continuously uses brutal force and violence despite claiming to help prevent crime. Just this past October, 17-year-old Christopher Tonsel was shot in the stomach by Officer Leighton Williams of the St. Pete Police Department. Officer Leighton Williams has not been held accountable by his actions in any sense. Christopher is a Black teen who did not deserve to be shot, and the body cam footage that was only released until months later after increased public pressure reflects this. Christopher suffered lung, pancreas, and liver damage and came close to dying in adult jail. His case is not unique, and it shows us what happens when the police receive a bloated budget and are not held accountable for their actions. I urge you to invest in public housing and other programs that truly center the health and well-being of our citizens. This includes the continuation of CALL, the Community Assistance Program that responds to mental health and social services. This program should be separate from the police as it de-escalates situations and aids our community. I encourage everyone to join the St. Pete Tenants Union and PSL at a protest on May 25th at 6 p.m. outside of this building on the 2-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. Thank you.
Olivia Cole, 2640 54th Avenue South. I'm here to echo the sentiments of the St. Petersburg Tenants Union of the PSL, everything that you've heard today about public housing, about affordable housing, about not giving more money to the police. I just want to reiterate here that a safe community does not look like a community with a bloated police budget. It does not look like a community with more cops. It looks like a community with more resources, and resources come from this budget. The allocation of more funds to the police is not going to do anything to solve the housing crisis. It's not going to do anything to solve the crisis of all of your teachers quitting. Take 1 second to talk with your school board, to talk with the teachers of this county. They are all leaving in droves because you don't pay them enough. My partner is a school teacher and could not afford to live by themselves in this county. I am a veteran who came home from participating in a war in an army that I joined because I was homeless, and I can't afford to live here. I receive government stipends for my participation in the war. I'm a college student. I receive student loans, right? I'm in a good financial position, all things considered, and I still can't afford to live in St. Petersburg. I don't know what you guys are gonna do when the future of your city has to leave. I don't know what y'all are gonna do when the workers of your city have to leave, right? This is killing people. This is ridding people of their homes, and it's really, really unconscionable. Y'all wake up every single day with an opportunity to make a difference. You were elected because we believe you can make a difference, and you're really starting to let us down, and you have a chance to change that with this budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next two speak. Studio. Next two speakers, Madam Chair, is Billy Bronca and Tori Nelson. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address Mayor and City Council.
Good evening. I'm the partner. I quit because we don't make any money and I'm gay. Billy Bronca, 2640 54th Avenue South. I just also want to support the ADA compliance. It's, again, a no-brainer. While I commend the council for proposing raises for workers and pedestrian safety, this feels like the bare minimum and a soundbite distraction from the undeniable issues this budget presents. I support the importance of Councilperson Big Sanders' places on housing and the creation of an emergency rental assistance program, but again, this is the bare minimum. With a budget so sprawling and irrationally huge, I cannot understand how the city continues to fail to subsidize public housing and struggling citizens, if not from a place of maliciousness. I know that you do not occupy and cannot understand the reality of the communities we live in, but you drive through them, you hear about them, you know how desperate we are. I find it most concerning, however, that you are again raising the police budget, despite widespread knowledge supported by decades of data that increased police funding and presence does not decrease crime. And of course, let's dispense with the blue washing and acknowledge the obvious truth that crime in America is a fiction created to control and enslave non-white and working class communities. Cops exist to protect the property of rich and accumulate their unpaid workforce. They exist to enforce the segregation that our city has become so famous for. They exist to terrorize. There is no need for more cops in St. Pete. We have already been bullied, bloodied, and brutalized enough. To me, it feels obvious that you do not represent us, our needs, or our interests. Even in attending this meeting, it feels like fighting a losing battle. Will you listen to a single thing that we say tonight? In a society screaming for release, you again appear to be choosing to fund the slumlords and the Gestapo over the living people who you have gained your power through. I hope that you prove me wrong. While I have your attention, I want to entreat you to look over the faces before you this evening, to, for a moment, try to render in yourself some sliver of the agony and terror each of us feels as we come again to this microphone, to this sacrificial altar, to our own funeral pyre over which we raise our voices as a community and supplicate. We ask again for what we should automatically be granted, the right to survive in our own city. We come here again to beg you to use your power as you were elected to. If you do listen to anything that I have said, I beg you to use your power as you were elected to. Please hear our desperation. And if my fellow citizens are listening, I beg you all to hear the power in our own voices. Workers of the world, unite.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your service. If anybody knows what it takes to hold this seat, it's me. So, Mayor Welch looking good. I don't see any gray hairs growing yet. Not stressing out. Well, I'm not here more just to throw an idea out in the atmosphere.
Nelson.
Mr.
Nelson, before you begin, please state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tori Nelson, 4734 20th Avenue South, St. Pete, Florida, 33711. And more or less, I just want to throw an idea out for Mayor Welsh. Chan, I love you. But Mr. Corbett's, I'm not sure if it's in the fiasco budget, but Mr. Corbett's city employee rental assistance program, I just feel like we can find a more sustainable concrete plan for that one. I feel like it's money we're going to throw down the drain. Whatever, if we find the money, it's going to be not money we can recycle. I'm not sure if it's in the city charter, if we can, maybe we can become the landlord. We can find that money, allocate ourselves to become the landlord, and maybe acquire some land, 50% of the land dedicated to the city, 25% to the seniors. Because one thing we have, it's a sad thing to see grandmas end up in a homeless shelter. So we have to think about all the citizens in the city. A lot of the citizens would love to have a city job. And also, before I go, tenants union, I love you guys. I love you guys to death. Our officers get a bad rap. For a lot of our citizens don't understand. If I have a civil issue, I'm calling the police. So they get our worst all the time, and they get one negative thing and they're thrown under the bus. I don't know anybody here that has to carry a gun to their occupation every day, but I'm pretty sure that's stressful. So we need to be more mindful and considerate about officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next two speakers, Madam Chair, I believe it's Devontae Sullivan and Maris Scott. Once you go to the either podium, please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the mayor and city council.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Hello, my name is Devontae Sullivan, and I'm here with the St. Petersburg Tenants Union. Some of our speakers have mentioned concerns with transportation and issues regarding traffic. I believe this is only promulgated by the lack of public transportation provided, given the restricted 40 services of bus services for a local population of over 250,000. 40 routes, sorry. Around 30,000 people ride the bus on average for a daily basis. I promise you this rate would go up if bus access, utility, and usage were promoted as opposed to forcing everyone into cars and Uber rides. I'd also like to make a quick point about housing, as some of my union partners here have done. There's only a running 2-week supply on average for this city, and around 300,000 last year was allocated for rapid rehousing. That's 300,000 allocated for a multi-million-dollar problem, compared to the $116 million advocated for last year's police budget, which is looking at an increase of $6 million. Very interesting that under these conditions, a rent control was hardly entertained with the majority of our council. Nevertheless, this can easily be remedied without major housing development. Many speakers here have already mentioned the benefit of social housing programs, and there are about 26,000 unoccupied homes in this area. I think rather than outsource affordable housing to developers who are able to freely choose their profit margins years after their development, why not revitalize the bulk of these spaces that the city owns and allow the houseless and underserved a place of refuge? Unless, of course, the goal is exposure on a national scale with the rise of development in Florida and profit and you know what. Given the average apartment rate in this city is around $1,600 a month, that means an individual would need to make, given the 3-time over in income, $57,000 a year for general approval by a landlord and or apartment association to be at bare minimum approved. I just want to do a quick little experiment here. If you're comfortable, please raise your hand if you make less than $57,000 a year. Interesting, that's a lot of hands. All right. So lastly, I'd like to end on a lighter note. I think one excellent idea the city had was free testing centers, as Florida became the epicenter of the corona epidemic, especially in centers such as the Tropicana Field. I think exercises like this are great and should be emphasized, if not increased, in large venues and capacities that we have around the city for the future. That could include toiletries, internet accessibility, food and water access, basic public resources that public citizens should be allowed to utilize because they pay public taxes, something that unoccupied developers who outsource homes in our city year-round often do not contribute. So I think you've been placed in a situation that can really change the course of the city, and for our citizens like myself for good, and I know that you will, because if you don't, then the people will. Please join us again, same time on the 25th, 6 p.m. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
Hi, Maurice Scott, 3275 Pinellas Point Drive South. Mr. Mayor, Ms. Driscoll, and Commission, Council. I represent an organization called Keys for Life. We exist to, one, honor God, memorialize my son Marquise Scott, who was lost to gun violence, and to take a stand against community gun violence. 3 areas I think monies could be used to help us. Number one, in going out with our pledge, we ran into a lot of parents, a lot of young men out there in the streets, and in our experience of working with rec centers, we talked to some of the heads of rec centers, and we found out that rec centers are generally used right now for aftercare, and we love that. But we need extended hours and alternatives for young adults as well as teens. A lot of parents are echoing this out in the community, as well as the young adults who are above high school level. They don't have any alternatives. Secondly, I would like to see development of more restorative justice program, specifically in the order of community, creating a governing body of community citizens that perhaps hear nonviolent crimes and seek to avert kids from the criminal justice system, to assess their needs, whether mental health, whether education, employment, and provide that help for them, but more importantly, to help them to direct their restorative efforts for their crimes to those particular communities that they have affected. Number 3, I would definitely like to see more funds for organizations like Keys for Life, who are innovative yet still developing and creating innovative ways to handle our gun violence problems here. That's less restrictive, time-wise, and things of that nature. As we know, we've done the same old thing all the time, and it seems to be status quo, but it seems that we're starting to do some new things. And because we're new, we don't have 2 or 3 years, but we do have impact. So a little less restrictive with funding that allow us to further develop programs that allow kids to be, of course, again, averted from gun violence, school fights, and to reinforce student readiness. Thank you guys for the opportunity. God bless.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we do have a speaker in Zoom.
Great.
All right, Madam Chair, the speaker's name, I believe, is David Harbaitner. David, once you enter into the meeting space, please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address mayor and council. David?
Yep, sorry, the unmute just came up. Thanks, and pretty close on that name. It's David Harbaitner, and I'm a member of the Sierra Club, so I'm going to speak with some of our priorities today. I do recognize, as Mayor Welch said to start our session this evening, that balancing significant needs of the community versus limited funds puts you guys in a very difficult situation, as always. But I did want to start by reiterating that all of us, I believe, think that housing is our #1 concern and must be the area that you guys focus on and come to better resolution with. But I did want to highlight a few other things that are out there that from the environmental and economic sense make sense as well. And these are the continued investments in the Water Master Resources Plan. We have been in situations in the past where our city government has taken the eye off the ball and the investments need to be made here. I implore you to continue to make the investments that are necessary, and I appreciate that Mayor Welch has many of these things in his proposed budget. Similarly, on the resiliency and sustainability investments, well, if we want to be a city that is a long-term residence for people, we need to continue to do things that recognize climate change, to recognize the need to increase our resiliency. So 2 things, programs you've done in the past that continue to need to be or deserve to be funded: the revolving energy investment fund and the use of green bonds. Both these programs do pay for themselves over time through the investment returns on improving building stock and what we get out of it from both the city government and the community at large. There is one other thing I did not see highlighted inside of the proposed budget right now, and that is neighborhood resilience hubs. As we get to the spot where severe weather is more likely to take place, it makes sense to make sure we have these resilience hubs available for our community throughout the entire city. Lastly, there were a couple of things that were not in the budget that I saw. One is something we've talked about in previous years. I did not see it highlighted much this year because of the need in housing, but this is the food crisis that we also have in our community. We know we have food deserts, pockets of them throughout the city, and the ability to use urban agriculture and food assistance should be things that are considered by the city council and the mayor to be included and emphasized in the coming year. And then lastly, the urban canopy and complete streets. We heard one of the speakers earlier talk about the difficulty of even crossing a street to get from a home over to where food is, and recognizing that that's part of the quality of life inside the city. Looking at the urban canopy and our complete streets are things that should be considered as well. Last, I did want to close on just a couple of thoughts on a personal level beyond my role in the Sierra Club. One is support of the call program, an excellent piece that makes the police much more likely to be successful in engaging with society at large and puts resources in the street where they need to be in terms of trained social workers and mental health professionals. And lastly, the social housing programs. The markets really have failed. It's a true statement what Mr. Nissen said earlier, and we need to come up with creative solutions, and they exist elsewhere that can be invested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last two speakers, Madam Chair, Tangela Butler and Bette Steinmuller. Please state your name and address for the record. You can go to either podium, and you have 3 minutes to address the mayor and city council.
Good evening. I'm Tangela Butler. My address 4529 4th Avenue South. I didn't write down anything I wanted to say because I'm going to speak from my heart tonight. I'm a bus driver for Pinellas County Schools. I've been driving for 19 years, faithfully every morning, getting up all day, picking up the world's most precious cargo, as they like to say, picking up kids, dropping them off. And these past couple of years, I've never encountered dropping off as many kids as I have at motels. These children are living in motels, and it breaks my heart to see our kids having to go stay in a motel when they should be in a house. They should be in a house. I don't know if any of you could imagine what it's like to be homeless. I never thought that I would ever find myself homeless because I'm a law-abiding citizen. I work every day to try to provide for my family. My landlord, I was in a house for 5 years, and she decided she wanted to sell. I said, okay, I couldn't, she did offer me to buy the house, but the house, it had too much that had to be done. And the price that she wanted, I couldn't afford it. I received a 50-cent raise last year. Been on my job 19 years, I received a 50-cent raise. I moved, my rent went up $500. You could do the math. So I found myself, before I actually found the place that I'm in now, I find myself facing homelessness. I did a story with ABC Action News because I couldn't believe it. How can I work in a city that I can't even afford to live in? How can I do the very best I can, give my all to my job, and I can't even afford to live here? And I'm not the only one. There's so many families out here, and we don't deserve this. We are the ones that we built this community. We paid our taxes. And why is it that they can come from up north and take what we've worked so hard to build? We helped this city build this city. You know, our sweat and tears was put into building this city, and we can't even afford to live here. So just like the other speaker said, what's going to happen when they force all of us out? What's going to happen when you go to Starbucks and want your favorite coffee? What's going to happen when you need your child picked up from the bus stops and there are no longer any bus drivers because we can't afford it? We can't afford it. And it's not fair. It's not fair for these children to have to be sleeping in storages. Families are living in their storages because they can't afford rent. Families are sleeping in their cars because they can't afford rent. It's not fair. Now they're saying that 211 and the agencies that are supposed to be helping homeless families, because families, does that mean? I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor Welch, council members. I retired as a professor in Boston.
Ma'am, please state your name and address for the
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Betty Steinmuller. I live at 11901 4th Street North, St. Petersburg. I retired as a professor in Boston and couldn't afford to live there. My husband and I decided to move to Mexico. I came here after living in Mexico for 16 years. My husband had passed away, and it was time for me to be back here. Not all retirees move to St. Pete with deep pockets. I really echo all the sentiments of the tenants union, but there's one area that hasn't been covered tonight. I'm 80 years old. I have a fixed income. I've had to move 3 times in St. Pete. I can't, where am I going to go when my landlord says, okay, we're going to raise your rent? I don't know. And I just want to talk about the people that are in the senior bracket who are also in great need of steady, reliable rental housing that's not going to be gouged every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have any more citizens requesting to speak?
No more speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for the time that you've taken to speak this evening. For our next segment, we will have remarks from City Council members, and then Mayor Welch will give the final remarks of the evening. Do we have any council members who wish to speak this evening? Councilmember Floyd. I'm just.
Thank you. Yes, we're not sitting in our usual seats.
Yeah. Let's just write it down.
Okay, well, I'll start. I just want to say thank you to everybody who came and expressed a lot of thoughts that I have myself as well. Just briefly urge people to, I heard some ideas here that I was really familiar with, but I heard some that I was not quite as familiar with today. I just want to urge you to please reach out to us outside of this process as well. I made sure to note some of the things, but it's really helpful if you reach out to us. So particularly, I'd be very open to meeting with anybody whenever they want. And please send me an email. It's richie.floyd@stpete.org, and I will get back to you. There's some really interesting ideas out there. And I just, again, want to say thank you. I know what it was like because I used to come to these just last year before I was elected. It's different for me on this side. I know it's difficult to take time out of your busy day to come do something that you feel like you shouldn't have to do because people should already be looking out for your best interest. So just wanted to say I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Montanari.
Thank you, Chair Driscoll. I too wanted to thank everybody for coming out. This is my 6th budget that I've been a part of here in St. Petersburg, and it's always a difficult job trying to prioritize what everybody wants with limited resources. But as Mayor Welch mentioned in his remarks, our budget is a value statement. And I appreciate everybody coming out and sharing your values with us. We live in a wonderful city with a lot of good things going on, but it also is a large city with a lot of needs. And we take our responsibility as city council seriously when it comes to the budget, and try to always do what's best for the needs of the residents of the city of St. Petersburg. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Chair, for leading us.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone, for coming out today and for spending this Monday evening with us. I don't typically say much in these meetings because I very much believe that this is about us hearing from you. As Council Chair Driscoll started earlier, we start our process in January, and we get the opportunity then to pontificate on about all the things that we think the budget should be. And, I'm I'm glad that many of the things that I care about are the things that you care about, but it's important for us to hear the details of which you want us to focus. And so that's really why I'm here this evening. Not here to, go into a back and forth, but I would love the opportunity to speak with you all more closely one-on-one. So I also echo the comments of Councilmember Floyd. Please reach out to us. I know sometimes it's tempting to think that, oh, well, maybe she won't agree, or maybe we won't see eye to eye. That is not what matters. What matters is that we're having open dialogue, that we're having conversation, and that we're trying to find a place where we can make that balance that is so important, and really make sure that those dollars are directed to the areas of greatest need. So please continue the conversation. We're here to listen, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor, for having us. I really just quickly wanted to echo the sentiment of my colleagues. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, sharing your voice. I really do believe, I'll speak for myself, but I think I can speak for my colleagues. We hear you. We're listening. I took 4 pages of notes. My hand's tired. I've said this from the beginning that I want to do more listening than talking. I totally agree with Vice Chair Gabbard and Councilmember Floyd. My door is open. So, and I agree, we're not always going to agree, but I am always willing to listen. And I think that's everybody up here. And so I certainly embrace that conversation, and I'm happy to listen whenever somebody wants to voice, whether it's budget or any other item that comes before us. And I would happily invite that conversation. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for spending your evening with us, and looking forward to continuing this process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I'll be brief since I gave my remarks at the top. This is really just great information. It's always so enlightening to hear not just that you care about housing, but you've actually given it some thought and you have ideas that you're expressing to us on what you want that to look like. Thank you for that. We do have, I believe we will have a conversation on right to counsel. It is a new business item that I believe Councilmember Floyd brought forward.
Are we allowed to talk about this
right now? No, I'm not getting into it. I'm just mentioning that is something that we are actually going to be talking about soon. So we are with you on some of these items and already working on that. But yeah, we have to make sure that the funding is there too, and not just in small ways. If we want stronger neighborhoods, we have to make sure that we're looking at truly effective ways of addressing gun violence in our community. Heard a new idea tonight. We need to look into these things. So thank you for everything that you have given us to take home, think about, and figure out not whether, but how we move forward together. Thank you. Mayor Welch?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo your comments. Thank everyone for coming out tonight. This was a great conversation. And look, I'm agnostic about where good ideas come from. If you've got an idea that moves us forward, I want to hear about it. And I will, tell you when I disagree on something. So, I do want to look into the right to counsel, the Cleveland model that y'all talked about. I want to look at that and see how it works. Are you bringing something forward, council member?
I can say it to you. Yeah, it's
Okay.
already in committee.
Okay. And the means testing, I hadn't heard about it. Maybe that was at a staff level, but we want something that works and doesn't discourage folks. But the range of issues that we talked about tonight, housing, look, we're all impacted by housing. I want a place where my daughters can live. I hear from seniors who are hearing their rent is going up $800. You're preaching to the choir on these issues. And I hope we can move forward working together on these issues. Keys for Life, a great program. We're going to look and we got to find a way to reach kids who we aren't reaching. The easiest way to get to neighborhood safety is to reach our young people. And so I just heard a lot of good ideas tonight, and we will follow up. The social housing model, I'd love to talk about it. You know, I've been working in housing for 20 years, and what we have built, like the Brooker Creeks apartment, is permanently affordable. They don't get the Housing Trust Fund money unless it's permanently affordable for 99 years. So I think we are doing a lot of what you're talking about. But look, I'm always open for a conversation. What I'm not open to is defunding our police department. Our police department does an excellent job. And I am from the community. Somebody said you're not in the community. Well, I was born and raised in this community. And last year we went to Childs Park and Bartlett Park and Camel Park. And what the people said in the neighborhoods in the middle of the street was, we want more police presence. We don't want it to take so long to hit that drug house because we have to live here. And so our police are accountable. They do a good job. We're going to hold them to be accountable, but it's not an either or. We can do both. And one of the things that we've already been to Washington 2 times to try to pull down that infrastructure money in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We've got $9 million in our penny for Pinellas that we're using to fix our pipes and plants. If we can offset that, there's a funding source we can use for housing. So there are a lot of ways to get there. I just urge you to keep the open dialogue, and I look forward to us moving forward to build this budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And thanks everyone once again. And this will conclude our budget open house for fiscal year 2023. Thank you and good night.